Welcome to the News and Why It Matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez. We have a brand new lineup with us today. We've got Jason Buttrell sitting in the first chair here. Yeah. Wow, look at that promotion.
Big boy seat. I know, right?
I told him, I said, Jason, just because you're sitting there doesn't mean you're allowed to just talk for 15 minutes with no interruptions.
Why not?
That's only reserved for Glenn.
Literally the only reason I agreed to be on the show today.
We've also got Lathan Watts from First Liberty. Say that 3 times fast, Sarah.
Easy for you to say.
Communications director from First Liberty. You work with our good friend Jeremy.
I do.
So we're happy to have you. We decided to ditch him and go with you. I'm just kidding.
I've got better hair.
And then we've got Blaze media critic Rob Eno in town along for the ride.
In town along for the ride, finding a place to move, and I'll be here in 2 months.
Wow.
So
welcome to Texas.
Yeah, it's hot. It's real, and I'm from South Carolina now, so it's really, really hot.
It is. I think probably July is not like the time that you want to just move here and adapt to the weather.
So we're waiting until September 1st, yeah. Labor Day weekend. When I'm
all right, Jason, what's your top story today?
We used to be the party of fiscal responsibility. That's kind of gone away. I don't think there is a party of fiscal responsibility anymore. And the 22 trillion, I think, is national debt. 1 trillion budget deficit every year. And the new numbers came out for May that showed spending, and frightening.
All right, Lathan.
My story is one that kind of got lost towards the end of the news cycle last week because of the holiday, but it's really important. New policy directive from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs that will protect religious displays at all VA facilities around the country. So it's a big step. It's a great policy, and it is in keeping with, he actually cited the recent Supreme Court decision, in our case, American Legion versus American Humanist Association. So we're excited to see the immediate impact of that case.
Okay, all right. Can't wait to hear the details on it. Rob.
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg at the Aspen Ideas Festival last month went and bragged about shutting down political ads from opponents of the law or the referendum in Ireland last year that made abortion legal. In the Republic of Ireland, I believe it's still illegal in Northern Ireland, even though it's legal in the rest of the UK. Mm-hmm. But he said that he wished that countries would do it, but if countries aren't going to give them direction on how to police speech, he would ask some people in the country how to do it and then do it himself.
Oh, good. Oh, man, I can't wait. A lot to get into. Obviously, first we want to thank our sponsor, American Financing. So if you are looking for home loan, refi, whatever the case may be, American Financing is who you want to depend on. They have salary-based professionals there. They're not commission-based, which is huge when you're talking about, I don't know, the biggest investment you're ever going to make in your life. No pressure there. It's just that you kind of want someone who, A, is knowledgeable, B, is not in it for the kickbacks that they might be getting, in commission, and C, will answer your questions and not make you feel stupid. Because let's face it, you go there and there's this big stack of paper and they're explaining things to you and you're like, yeah, I understand those numbers. I don't want to ask anything because I'm going to sound really dumb. No, don't do that. Go to American Financing. Let them answer your questions. Let them put you in a position, a financial position that's going to be right for you and your family. You can go to AmericanFinancing.net or you can call 800-906-2440, AmericanFinancing.net. All right, Jason, there is no party anymore that's concerned at all with spending.
No, there really isn't. It irritates me, it angers me, actually, that the lack of discussion. I don't think there was a serious conversation, even on rolling back, like entitlements and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, everything. Probably maybe since Paul Ryan. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I just kind of went away. It's political suicide to say that you're going to roll those back. So they just don't even touch it. I remember there's some reports came out last year, maybe 2 years ago, that they said that the trust fund for Medicare was going to be completely depleted in 8 years. Social Security, the exact same in 16 years. Those are going to be gone. Mm-hmm. Our unfunded liabilities right now are at about 122 trillion. So basically what that is that's the government has promised to say, look, we're going to provide for pensions, we're going to provide, for people that work for the government or whatever. We're going to pay out Medicare, Medicaid to all these people, Social Security for people. For boomers, that's getting at a crisis level right now. 10,000 boomers are retiring every single day. 10,000. We're an aging country. And that 122 trillion that we promised to pay, they don't have the money. That's why it's unfunded. They don't have the money. So there is going to be significant change. Either these programs are going away, or we're looking at a lot of taxes, basically, to try and like fix that. This is going to affect everyone's lives significantly in the very near future. To what I teased at before, the Treasury Department came out with their figures from May. And they're saying that this is how much all the different, departments, whatever, but basically most of the organizations within the government that me as a libertarian would just do away with. But me as a libertarian, these right here, about the 4 on this graphic, are the 4 that I would say these are must-have. Like, these are the ones that I would say I wouldn't get rid of them. If I was president, I would keep these and strike probably anything else that had department of or agency of. But the Department of Defense spent $652 billion. This is in a fiscal year. So this is how much they've been spending over the first few months, and this is what it's projected at for the rest of the year. Homeland Security will spend $62 billion. Department of Justice, $41 billion. Department of State, $29 billion. Now check this out. This is the Department of Health and Human Services. $102 billion per month.
Jeez.
Per month. That's an all-time record. They're spending over $100 billion every single month. Now, to put this into perspective, they're going to spend $1.2 trillion for the entire year. That breaks down to $102 billion a month, like I said, almost $5 billion a day, $197 million per hour, and $3 million per minute. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. And 90% of that goes to what you would pretty much assume Medicare and Medicaid. 90%. It's a small fraction that goes to, like, say, the CDC or other areas like that, but 90% is going to Medicare and Medicaid. Who is talking about doing anything about Medicare and Medicaid? No, absolutely no one is. I remember Ben Carson.
Except for making Medicare for all.
Right.
They just want to
You think it's
expand
bankrupt
it.
now?
Yeah, they just want to expand it.
Very good point. And like I just said, that's going to be gone in almost 8 years, what they're projecting. They can't even fund it. Now, instead, they're going to provide it to more people. That's absolutely nuts. The only way you're going to pay for it, again, is I would assume something like the NHS, which they don't even really talk about. They don't even go into the specifics of it. But a lot of people think that, oh, well, the government's going to pay for it, no big deal. Yeah, we might have some taxes. No, you're going to see that on your paycheck, just like citizens of the UK do. I looked at a friend of mine's old paycheck when he used to live there. They have their regular, like tax for this, tax for that, tax for that, and NHS, and it goes about $500 a month or something like that, depending on how much you make or whatever.
So you're still paying for health insurance.
Exactly
it's just coming
the
from the
same.
government. Yeah,
yes,
it's
exactly
free.
the same.
When I move here, mine's going to be about $550 a month, up from what I was paying in South Carolina. Yes, it will pay everything, but you look at that Medicaid. The reason health insurance is expensive is because there's third-party payment. The way to get health insurance down is not to add third-party payment like we did with the housing crisis and with education and all of these other things that the government sticks its nose in and throws boatloads of money into it. It's to do things like the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, which is right up the road here in Oklahoma, just north of here, does. And they have a price transparency menu. And Donald Trump did the price transparency stuff about a month and a half ago, and the media doesn't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's always like, what has Donald Trump done? Well, he's done this, 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 and this. And normally when the economy goes well, like it's been doing, you see these sorts of things go down. But with Obamacare saying we're going to pay for everybody's Medicaid, it went up. But I mean, what is it? Food stamps are at like 20-year lows now because like in the 90s when the economy roared, food stamp usage came down.
You know what I heard, though? I heard on Twitter, which is always the place you should get your reputable
It is the best place for news.
I heard on Twitter that food stamps were low, at a record low, because Donald Trump is just taking it away from people.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't have it. They're just starving in the streets, Rob. That's why food stamps are dramatically lower.
Lefty Twitter on this stuff is just crazy. If you lived in Twitter, you would think that Donald Trump is going to lose this election by like 40%.
Yeah.
But when you talk to actual people in inner cities, look at the BET president was like, they've gone too far left just this week. If you talk to actual middle-class African-American people like I have, they're like, no, we're doing great, man. Like a lot of people don't want to rock this boat. And a lot of just the angry stuff is that. But to get back to your point, in a booming economy, I mean, we didn't have tax rates there, but like our tax receipts are the highest they've ever been, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Even with the Trump tax cut, the tax rates have been going up. So, everybody's like, oh, the tax cuts are what's driving this. No, it's that you're spending twice what you're spending on defense, which is an actual thing that's supposed to happen in the country.
It's record tax revenue. I think where we're at right now.
Oh, it always is. Every time you lower rates, revenue goes up. And so this would be the perfect time to do something about deficits when you have record revenue. And you're right, nothing has really even been proposed maybe since the Budget Control Act, which exempted entitlements, which even that didn't do anything about the entitlement spending, which is what's driving the deficit. I mean, you mentioned HHS and their budget. HHS, if it stood alone as a government on its own in terms of budget and personnel, would be among like the top 10 biggest governments in the world. Just that one department. So you're never going to address this problem without addressing entitlements. And
Social Security is the other one. I think Health and Human Services is 1.2 trillion. Social Security is about 1 trillion as well.
Healthcare is the one sector of the economy that has zero market forces involved. If you want to bring down cost in anything, introduce free and open market competition. There are, previous career, worked for a nonprofit association. There's an association for literally everything in this country. There's even an association for associations.
Yeah.
If you eliminate barriers to compete across state lines for health insurance companies, those associations that represent millions of people around the country could buy health insurance for their members as a benefit of being that association. The cost would come down because you'd have millions of people in that risk pool just for one association. You start introducing market forces. Health insurance companies have to start competing and lowering their prices. It would be a silver bullet almost to a lot of issues around healthcare, which, as you said, in HHS, Medicare, Medicaid, all of those things are what's driving the deficit, and it's all related to healthcare.
What irritates me about the GOP today is no one's saying what you just said. They're not advocating that. The only people in government that I feel are making a case for healthcare are the socialists.
Medicare for all.
Yes, they're the only ones.
Well, because what happens is when you make that case, right, the lefty Twitter people, but even the mainstream media, when you make that case, people today conflate market forces with crony capitalism.
Right.
They when you say I want private health care, they think private insurance companies, which really are, going back to Atlas Shrugged, they're the people that Wesley Mouch said that you could have, you could have this company if you do everything the government says you can do. That's what insurance companies are. And it's funny you say state lines, right? I'm making the move from South Carolina here to Texas, and I'm on an exchange plan because the way that we get paid, we do exchange plans, and that's how we pay for our health care. We get compensated for it. That's how we do it. And my exchange plan is going to go up by like 25% coming from Texas. But weirdly, South Carolina has only one company on the exchange. I think they regulate it more, which is why the costs are driven down. I think Texas is like, you can do whatever you want because it's Texas. But, there's no market forces obviously here. And it's more money and the plan's worse. So yeah, if you had big pools of people that could go across state lines and they could offer, I want to be able to just keep the plan that I have when I move to Texas. I mean, the drugs will work, the prescriptions will work because CVS will just do it wherever because I've gotten prescriptions anywhere. But I can't go out of network for my stuff, so I literally can't use a doctor here unless I do telemedicine for like the 3 months before I move over.
The perfect example, take a look at LASIK eye surgery, right? Not covered by most health insurance plans, right? So you'll learn this here in Dallas. Advertising on radio and TV for half a dozen, LASIK eye surgeries. It's gotten more available and cheaper since that procedure was come up with. Why? Specifically because you have to pay for it out of pocket and people shop around. If you call your doctor right now and ask him, what do you charge for X? You'll probably get answered with the question, well, what insurance do you have? They can't even tell you what the price of it is.
Yeah, and even then, they'll say, well, I got to get the billing to go look that up and call you back, and it's all very complicated. So
but I'll tell you.
We got to go to break. Sorry, we'll be back. All right, Lathan, you said that you have some good news. I love when you guys from First Liberty come because you almost always bring really good news.
We try to.
And as far as religious liberty is concerned.
Correct. So late last week, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs announced a new policy for all VA facilities around the country. And that policy was designed to protect religious symbols and displays, practices, literature in all VA facilities around the country. And where this started was up in New Hampshire, in Manchester, there's a VA hospital there, and the Northeast POW MIA network, who's our client, asked for permission and received it and put up a POW MIA remembrance table at the VA hospital. They're pretty common around VA facilities around the country. And every item on a POW MIA table is symbolic. And so there's a yellow rose, there's an empty chair for the POW. And one of those symbols is typically a Bible that symbolizes the strength gained through faith of the POW and his family while they wait. Well, the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, which is an Orwellian named group because they hate religious freedom.
Started by who? Don't want to derail you there, but
it's a guy named Mikey Weinstein. And he sent a letter to the VA facility in Manchester saying that this was illegal to have this Bible on the table and that it was somehow an Establishment Clause violation and threatening to sue them. So we sent a letter to the VA explaining what the law actually is and what the current VA policy was, that this is a private display and it's perfectly acceptable to have it there. And that director made the right decision and said it's going to stay. I think since then, Mikey's filed a lawsuit, like he said he was going to, and we'll be representing the POW MIA network, Northeast network. But when we sent the letter to that facility director, we also sent a letter to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. What we asked him to do was consider adopting a policy nationwide for all facilities, because if not, this group and others will just go facility to facility, because the current policy was to leave that at the discretion of the facility director. Mm-hmm. And what we said was, look, these guys are just going to go across the country and hit these things everywhere, because there's probably going to be some director who doesn't understand what the policy or the law is, and just out of an abundance of caution or fear of getting sued is going to comply with this when he or she doesn't have to. So late last week, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs issued this new policy, and it protects, it says the new policies will allow the inclusion in appropriate circumstances of religious content in publicly accessible displays at VA facilities, allow patients and their guests to request and be provided religious literature, symbols, sacred texts during visits to VA chapels and during their treatment, allow the VA to accept donations of religious literature, cards, symbols at its facilities and distribute them to patrons under appropriate circumstances or to a patron who requests them. And then the great thing about their press release is right at the end they say, the U.S. Supreme Court recently reaffirmed the important role religion plays in the lives of many Americans and its consistency with constitutional principles. And that's a direct cite of the recent case that we just won about 3 weeks ago, the American Legion versus American Humanist Association. So it was great to see almost an immediate impact of that decision. Yeah. And a new policy that's going to protect these types of displays all over the country. Yeah. So it was a big day for us when we saw this come out, and I'm glad to get a chance to talk about it here because it kind of got lost in the news cycle of the
I didn't hear about it. I didn't hear about it at all. It's interesting. These organizations think that religious freedom means freedom from religion.
Right.
Oftentimes, and I just not how it was supposed to be set up. Jason, you want to weigh in?
I'm curious. How were they even able to come forward with this? Is it because it's a government-run?
Because it's a VA facility, so it's government-run.
Another reason. Sorry to derail this again, but another reason why the VA should be privatized. I know that veterans have been kind of split on this, so very passionately on both sides. But it just needs to be privatized. Get it out of their hands. I mean, if you strongly believe in the welfare of anything at all, why do you think the government will be able to do it well?
Well,
they never do.
AOC told me that the VA system is working great, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's who I usually use as like my beacon of truth and news. Yeah. That's who I use. Rob?
Yeah, no, but you're right. I mean, the whole freedom from religion thing, they used to hold church services in the Senate chamber on Capitol Hill when the Capitol was first built.
That's where Thomas Jefferson went to church as president.
Right.
The guy who wrote the phrase separation of church and state in that letter, that's where he went to church.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's not freedom of religion. It's not freedom from religion. It's freedom of religion. It's that there's not a state. What I think people in the United States don't understand is in other countries, you go to Europe, in Germany and France, there are religion taxes. Right. So in Germany, you must pay a religion tax and you must tell them which religion that you belong to, and they take a certain amount out of your paycheck in withholdings and give it to whatever church you say you belong to. That's what the United States said we're not going to do because there was an established church. And even after the Constitution until I forget which amendment. I'm not a lawyer, but there was an amendment that said that all the constitutional amendments had to apply to actual states.
Right.
There were still state-based religions. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts had state-based religions, and that's where they fought for liberty.
Right.
So this whole people just don't remember history. They don't understand what these things are for, and they want to. It's people like, I'm going to say it. You don't have to because you're going to go up against them in court. Was it Weintraub or Weinstein?
Weinstein, yeah.
It's people like Mr. Weinstein that want to fundamentally change what America is. That brings these sort of cases, and that's what this is about. It's about fundamentally changing what the United States is.
I think it also speaks to the culture of today's society that we're now triggered by objects, right? Like it's supposed to bother me that there's something sitting on a table that I can make the decision to choose to just walk away from and not look at or be bothered by it, but we've developed this culture that I saw a cross and I'm somehow triggered by that object.
Right. I mean, the Constitution protects your rights, not your feelings. It's as simple as that. And that was one of the great things in the American Legion decision in Justice Gorsuch, in his concurrence that Justice Thomas joined. And I won't get too far in this because I know you've covered this on the show before. But in his concurrence, he said we should also, now that we're kind of returning to the original text of the First Amendment in analyzing these cases, we should also completely do away with the offended observer status. Mm-hmm. And Thomas agreed with him and said, these types of cases should be dismissed for lack of standing. Yeah. Just because you're offended by seeing an object should not provide you standing to go into court and have that object removed or torn down.
Right.
And that's, again, it gets to your cultural point, and we'll see how courts are going to apply that going forward. But I think groups like this are going to have a tougher climb surviving motions to dismiss on these types of things, simply because this offended observer status, it's only present in Establishment Clause cases. It's the only place in the law where we recognize this right to go to court and have something torn down because you don't like it. Yeah. It's only when in Establishment Clause cases. And so hopefully this is the indication of, it's morning in America again.
Yeah, and maybe instead of spending money on a court case, just get yourself a therapist. All right, back in a minute. Go talk it out on the couch.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like you were saying, it's throwing a milkshake with quick dry cement at somebody.
All right, Lathan, really quickly, I want you to make sure you can tell everyone where they can find more information about First Liberty and the cases that you guys are working on.
Absolutely, thank you. It's firstliberty.org is our website. If you're a texter, text the word Liberty to 474747. You'll get a response that'll prompt you through getting on our email list. We're not going to spam you to death. We just send out a little newsletter update on all of our cases and how things are going in the country. And people can learn more about all of these cases and many more at the website.
That's great. We appreciate all of the good work that you guys are doing over there. I also just wanted to point out, Facebook, if you're watching, there may be a reason that we're saving Rob's story for overtime, because I'm not sure that Mark Zuckerberg will like to hear it on his own platform. So if you're watching on Facebook, you got to go to BlazeTV.com to catch overtime. We don't want to hurt Mark Zuckerberg's feelings, all right? We'll see you there.